Alex, welcome to Early Days.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
I spend my whole life chasing you. When will you come home to me?
Awesome. So thanks for coming on the show. I think we've been enjoying your HeatBit here in the lab uh, I think it's been going on 3 weeks now. I think somebody told me we were mining like 300 sats or 200 sats, 260 sats, some amount like that per day. So yeah, and then it was freezing when you sent it over, so it was like perfect timing. And it got so hot in here where people were complaining that it was too hot in here, so it works really really well. And I was like, well, just turn off the heat bit. I think it has like a climate control thing, so you can actually turn it off but still use it as like a filter of a sort, right? Is that how that works?
Yeah. It's in summer you could just use it as an air filter,
Yeah.
but you could also just use it. So it's got different modes, right? There's one of the modes is eco mode, where it's just heating with a miner. It's not that much power. It's like 400 watts. I think for the size of spaces you got of what you got, 400 watts is not much. So that would be enough to kind of keep it a little warmer, if
Yeah,
needed.
but it's fantastic. It's a beautiful product. It felt like an Apple unboxing when we first got it, so it's yeah,
Nice.
everybody was like crowded
Really true.
around looking at it, and Francisco thought he was going to take it home, but we're like, no, this needs to stay here in the lab. Um,
Awesome. Glad
but
to hear that it keeps you guys warmer.
yeah, I was so yeah. So let's talk about HeatBit and talk about your journey as an entrepreneur and a builder in the space. Like, tell us about the early days of HeatBit and how you even found that market. It's such a interesting market to dive into. And yeah, just tell us about the early days of building the company.
Um, it actually started back in 2020. Um, I lived in China at the time in Shanghai, and we were the first ones to be under the lockdowns because of COVID. You know, at that time, beginning of 2020, it was still that thing in China. It wasn't global yet, right? So I was under the lockdown. I was getting a little bored, and I bought myself a toy, which happened to be an Antminer S9K and a Bitcoin miner. And it wasn't to actually mine. It was more of a toy to play with. I wanted to see what is it like, how to use it, and it's just fun. And then I turned it on in my bedroom actually. And first it was really loud, and then the whole room got really hot. And then I thought, wait a minute. If it were a heater, it would be using the same energy just to get the same amount of heat. But now it's actually mining and giving me the same amount of heat. That's great. You're essentially using a scarce resources, energy for two things at the same time, which is quite rare. So I thought, there's gonna be something in it. Like for me, the journey actually started from the smart use of energy, from this kind of extra utility that you get. And yeah, immediately I thought, well, if it weren't that loud, it could be a great heater. And then started looking into okay, how to make it not that loud, what are the resources available, etc. And I think like many entrepreneurs or many builders, we all start with the product and the technical aspects of it. Um, but I think what we then did right is very quickly you're gonna have to pace yourself. Like, will people buy this? Is it really needed, or is it, just my thinking? Because very often we just find solutions for a problem. It doesn't really exist. But here I thought, let's see. And I actually just started Googling, and it very quickly ended up on Reddit. And I saw people doing stuff like that themselves. They're like, oh, I'm just going to take a miner and make it make it a heater and it's great and works well. I thought, well, but it's great, but not everyone wants to tinker at home. And so if there were a plug and play product, then more people could essentially enjoy, the benefits of this kind of product. So it sounds like it would make sense. That's how it all started. And I think very quickly, within a couple of weeks, I think I already started working on both the product and trying to figure out the market for it as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So it really did come from a place of like curiosity and and I do this too sometimes where like I'll look at a building sometimes and I'm like, why is the exit sign green? Right? Or like it's just one of these things where it just doesn't make sense. Or why is it red or purple? It's just it's just these things where you see it like during the day, like a heater, for example. You walk by, air conditions and other sort of like HVAC appliances, and I often wonder, I'm just like, it's just using energy and it could be mining Bitcoin. Like an entire house could be mining Bitcoin while it's running its AC. And just scratch your head and it's like, oh, well, somebody will figure that out.
Mhm.
What do you think it was about this particular product, this solution that you were conjuring up in your head and checking it out on Reddit and these other places? Why do you think it was this particular thing that you really wanted to jump into?
I think there's something around passion. I've always been passionate about uh, not just creating something new, but creating something new that's physical. It's always been it's when you write code, and you have a product, you can't really touch it. You can see it, right? There's a website, there's some sort of representation of what you've done, but you can hardly touch it. But when you can touch it, it's a different kind of feeling. And I think everyone is different, but I've always been very excited about something that you can actually physically touch. And I think that kind of really played a role in here. That was one side. And the other side, I always um I really hate waste. So when something is being done in a way which is wasteful, I just feel bad about it. Like I often have kind of a bad feeling about very much luxurious goods, like a bag for, I don't know, $10,000. The reason the reason I would feel bad about it is not because, oh, someone is, spending too much money. It's their money, they can do whatever they want. But in order to sell that bag, there's someone who's gonna spend a lot of time and energy and effort to make it. There's probably going to be a person or several people in that shop, and that's actually the biggest waste here, who's going to stand in that shop and wait for that customer for like a week. And just going to be standing there, well dressed, cleaning the shop every few hours, and not really doing much else. It's just waiting for that customer. But because the customer comes in and provides so much margin on that bag, the business makes sense. And that part I kind of find wasteful. I think these people who are selling in those shops, they probably have their own talents that they could use to put to better use. And same with a craftsman, they could probably do something else, right? They could maybe they could grow food. That could kind of be more useful. You know what I mean? So whenever something is wasteful, I kind of feel bad. And on the flip side of that, if something becomes more efficient, it just inherently makes me feel good about this. And here I'm like, well, I've been reading about the Bitcoin mining, how it uses so much energy, more than this country, more than that country. And taking aside the question of whether it's worth it or not, whenever there is an opportunity to say, well, it doesn't need to use any of the energy, right? It could be just as secure. In fact, and we'll speak about this, I guess, but even more secure by using less energy. Like, well, that's great, you
Yeah,
know?
that's fantastic. You touched on a couple things there that I never quite heard before, but you get extreme satisfaction from building a real world product, and I'll talk to developers or other entrepreneurs, and they'll get the complete opposite of building like something that's online and or on an app or something. And I feel like I'm in a totally different bucket for me, I actually find it incredibly satisfying whenever I see somebody go from coming into Plub Lab and then getting to success. Like to me, that's the journey that I just love to see over and over and over again. So it's so many different ways where people get satisfaction from creating things. Can you talk about that first creation of the HeatBit and like why that was? Was it just kind of like this weird thing that was all pitched together with duct tape, or like
Yeah,
what was
yeah.
that first iteration of it? Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was. Trying to remember. Um, by then it was an just an S9i or S9J, because the first one was already broken. But by the time the first actual heater came up, um, and it was a different external fan. So I thought, well, the fans that you normally get, they designed as industrial devices, so they meant to be very loud and very efficient and moving air. So I already had another fan that was connected with, yeah, duct tape. Um, and then the firmware was changed, so the stock firmware would not work very well because it didn't give you too much of the control. So I had the brains installed on it. And that had, great settings for controlling it the way you want. And yeah, it was lying down horizontally, and working. I kind of underclocked it a little bit at first, and was just playing around with the settings. Um, and then I noticed, because it was winter, and actually winters in Shanghai are quite cold. So then I noticed that my cat was uh not right in front of it because there was quite a bit of the airflow, but at the opposite end, kind of within all of that warm air. And then I thought, the cat kind of likes it. And naturally, it's cold, right? So they want to find a warm place. But at the same time, I thought, okay, and the cat also appreciates that it's not loud. So I thought that was a good sign.
That's fascinating. And did you immediately think, okay, how am I going to put this in a nice aluminium like thing, and like when did the actual conceptual design start coming into place for it? Was it much
That was
later?
that
Was it
was a little later.
immediately?
So
Yeah.
for me, I'm definitely not the person who would do the visual design. Like I'm just really bad at it, and I think I know I'm bad at it. So that's when what the one that you see is actually the second iteration of our product. The first one was completely different. It was plastic. It was quite a bit bigger. And yeah, it looked very, very different. Now the designs for that one and for the one that you've got at Plab Lab, they came from the professional industrial designers. Like at some point you're like, well, let's just find the right people who can do this stuff. And we found a designer who won before he won Red Dot Awards. This is like super prestigious design awards in Germany. And we spoke to him, and he was like, "Well, that sounds like a cool product. Let's try." And then he came up with this aluminum tube that ended up being the HeatBit trigger.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful piece of machinery. I think it even has like a leather strap on it too that like you can lift up as well too. It's definitely very much like I don't know the correct word, but it's very, very much form over function, but a lot of the function comes inside the app. So yeah, and I never thought about it, but it is very German. Looking at it now, yeah,
Yeah. And then I think important, when we started the call, and I was asking you, what are things that people want to hear on the podcast? You told me, any kind of advice that entrepreneurs or builders, that'll be useful for them. I think everyone will have their own ideas, and that sources of inspiration are going to be completely different. Um, what I notice, and I think statistically it's true as well. Most of the projects, they fail when they hit the market. Right, so you can be building something for years, and maybe you actually build a really, really well-functioning product, but then once it hits the market, that's where the trouble really starts. And I think this is where most things fail. So I think the biggest advice I could give to people is to not be afraid of the market and try to hit the market as early as possible. Because I think it's pretty much everyone who has to iterate. I don't know. Look at Facebook. Facebook has grown as like a single product company. Only later they started all this like, oh, let's buy WhatsApp and goggles and whatnot. But it was a social network where you could poke people. Like that's it grew as that. But before that, Mark Zuckerberg he's built quite a few different products before, all in kind of the same area. So Facebook was essentially just another iteration of different ideas that he had. I think it's natural that all of us have to iterate, because as we start building, we learn. We learn more, we have new ideas, we change slightly, and like this is the nature of the iteration. That's how you really come up with really good product. And the earlier you know about where it fits in the market, the better. Kind of the more time you're gonna have, the more resources you're gonna have. I think for different kind of products, this hitting the market moment can be done in different ways. Um, for for us, that was a very standard way would be something like Kickstarter. So we didn't go on Kickstarter, we actually went to Indiegogo. And it was like a bit of a funny story, which I think a lot of people in the Bitcoin area would have have a similar experience. Um, so we launched on Indiegogo. It was actually a very successful campaign. Within a week, we had something like $40,000 in sales. People were really excited about the product. We didn't expect this much interest in the product, but it was like top trending product on Indiegogo after like day 2. And I thought, wow, this is great. And then one day I wake up and I see lots of emails. It was like, okay, everyone's been refunded and your campaign is closed. I'm like, wait,
Why? What happened? What
what
happened?
happened?
Yeah.
So, and that's what I'm saying. This is what I think a lot of people building in the Bitcoin space would be familiar with, or should be expect to face at some point. So Indiegogo, even though we actually checked beforehand, like, well, this is going to be the product. It mines Bitcoin, da 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 da. Is it okay? And they're like, yeah, it should be fine. So yeah, a week later, once we started getting some traction, they thought it's a get rich quick scheme,
Mhm.
and they closed down the campaign. So was it annoying? Yes. Um, was it something that would stop building? Definitely no. And then after actually a bit of thinking, we realized that, well, we actually got the most important part. We got the market confirmation. We had what, like um 40, 50 people who actually spent money, significant amount of money. I think the pricing was like $600-700 at the time. They spent significant amount of money on what we were planning to build. And then the product was not even built yet, right? It was clearly communicated on Indiegogo. Okay, this is the concept, this is how we're going to build it, and this is when we plan to have it. And we had what we thought was the realistic timeline, but then, especially in hardware, I think things take a lot longer. But yeah, hitting the market was very, very important. And in hardware, there's kind of a standard way that you can do it. I think you can always be smart about hitting the market early. I've heard stories of I wouldn't name which company, but it's a very well established, very well respected player in the Bitcoin space. It was essentially a B2B business, and when they came to meet with potential really large partners talking about their digital product, they didn't have the product. They had like Figma drawings, and it worked because and it enabled them to iterate quickly on the functionality. They got real feedback from the clients, real pain points, etc. And then when they actually built it, it was a product very well received by the market. So that's what you could do with digital products, right? You know, who's your customer? What are they gonna want? What is it that you can show to them? Um, yeah. So get to the customer, whoever the customer is, as early as possible. There's gonna be a lot of learnings in there.
Was there one particular, so after the Indiegogo campaign and then the confirmation that you had, what did you do after that? Did you just go and use that confirmation, get out a pitch deck and just go and raise? Or was it more of a, yeah, like,
No, no, no. And that's actually another thing. Raising money is not necessarily the first thing that you need to do. I think you can always be smart. Just be smart about how much money you spend on what. We had very small team for a very long time. Our first time, so the idea was born and we started working on this in 2020. The first employee was actually hired in like March 2022, only 2 years later. Before that, that would be me, and then I would be paying like a development agency. And the reason for that, like we didn't hire them full time, was because it's like, well, we just pay for the actual work that needs to be done. Like we can't really commit to like the full salary contract, etc. Um, what did we do to after the campaign? We're like, well, people buy, so let's build it. And then we spent quite a long time actually building it. Right, because we already had the market confirmation. We thought, well, you know, let's
right,
get to it and let's start building it. It was taking quite a bit of time. Uh, but then we thought, well, let's engage the customers more. And we actually set up the website and had the product there with the specs. We already knew what the specs will be, what it's going to look like. Put together a website, and we started just pre-orders. And with the pre-orders, we were really getting quite a lot of things. One is we were getting the confirmation that people needed, and kind of learning more about where are these people, who those people are. Second, we could engage with them and learn more about the product and the functionality, what's important for them, what's not important for them. And we were getting the money. Now, with the money that you get from customers, you really need to be very prudent about it, as to um, you need to deliver the product, and you have to be reasonably sure that you're gonna deliver the product. Otherwise, it's kind of unfair to your customers, right?
right,
So you're gonna be very, very careful with that. But if you're reasonably sure that you're gonna deliver, then just get it done.
right. And as far as that first product that you guys released, can you kind of explain the kind of go-to-market strategy outside of just the pre-orders? Was there any sort of like lucky breaks that you guys got along the way to get to that first delivery?
On the go-to-market strategy.
On both, like, was there like a, I'm not sure how you guys built it. I don't know if it was like individually or it was like through a warehouse or something, but was there just an operator that said, you know what, we can't do this many, but we can do this many, and yeah, and just kind of talk about like how that kind of
Okay.
played out.
So when it's a team of like 5 people, you just roll up your sleeves and get things done, right? So on the on the marketing side, that's the website. You try to use things that are off the shelf as much as possible, right? You try you I think it's generally as a rule you shouldn't be building things which are not actually your product, right? So if we sell space heaters that mine Bitcoin, we shouldn't be ourselves building a website, right? So we use Shopify, right? It's right there. What we should be building is our product, not whatever Shopify sales center. Um, so and then on the marketing side, it was quite simple. We tried to engage with the customers, and there was some sort of a referral program, and then it's advertising. We worked with Brave Browser, which is very popular in the Bitcoin and broader crypto community. And we tried Facebook, but that didn't work very well. So yeah, that was simply, that was the marketing. We didn't even really have a proper customer service, and I think that was one of the like really annoying parts to our customers who, when they spent the money on a startup that is not established, they never really heard of it before. A lot of people think like, oh, is it a scam? And then
Yeah.
they would write to us, and then when you have, I don't know, like 500 orders and you have like 100 emails per day, and you don't really have customer service people, so who does it? You do it, right? I would be responding to people, but then I have like 20 other priorities, so that means I can respond every day, respond a week later, 2 weeks later, and it gets tough. Um, so that's on the marketing side, and on the production side, you, like I said again, you roll up your sleeve and you do things. I went to the factory that would end up producing the first heat bits, and I stayed there for quite a long time. Whenever I would be needed there, I would be there. And that would be from finding the right factory to persuading them that they should even work with us. Because it's like, what's your volume? And we're like, maybe a few thousand units. And they're like, "Ah, come on." Like the factory where we produce them, they make 1.3 million units per year
Wow.
of other heaters and fans. And when I come to them with a product which is more complex than their regular products, and I say, oh, we're going to produce a few thousand, they laugh at me. So then, yeah, they didn't take us serious. So what you do, you find ways to kind of re-engage. And what worked, I actually, from a long time ago, from like a previous business, there was some sort of startup competition in China, and I ended up having a picture with like number two in the Chinese government at the time.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
in English, you would call him the Prime Minister, Li Keqiang. So I had a photo with him, because startup competition, whatever, presenting. So, and I sent this photo to the guy at the factory, and he was like, "Oh, this guy is serious." And then they started taking us more
Oh
seriously,
wow.
and then things started moving. Like things like that you have to do.
Gosh.
Um,
What a flex.
yeah, yeah. You talk about name dropping. That was the ultimate.
It's weird though, like when you do like you do to your startup, you kind of do have to push back. Kind of do have to hold your ground.
Mhm.
Because if you don't, like the dream's not gonna happen, right? Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I think um, not just push back, but the odds are generally against you, right? Any potential partner that you work with, you need to prove yourself. If you want to borrow money, your interest rate is going to be higher, right? There's only going to be a very small number of people who kind of believe in you, and that's your strength, right? It could be your family, your friends, your customers, maybe your initial investors. But generally, everything else is kind of against you when you're starting. Or maybe, especially if you're starting and you're doing something new, if you're not just opening a burger shop, uh, but you're doing something new, a lot of potential partners would think, Oh, I've never worked with something like that. That's strange. Oh, I'll pass. Like I've had a few conversations with like accounting firms, and there's service firm. They should want you as the client, and then you say, well, but we have some payments in crypto, and they're like, oh no, then we can't work with you,
Oh wow.
right? Or like with this factory, like they're a big factory. You come to them, and I also understand their position. Like, why should they bother? Right? We gonna be like 0.1% of their volume. Why should they bother? Right? And then but then they ended up being very nice, and they actually helped us improve the product really. It's one thing to build a product, and it's kind of you double that amount of work to actually bring it to industrial production, because that's like it's like a difference between building a plane and making it fly, you know?
Right.
Yeah, so and coming back to your question, what is it that you had to do? Yeah, roll up my sleeve. I was at the factory a lot of the time with the engineers, with the production people. When we started producing, I think I proved my Chinese quite a bit by then, that I would actually be explaining to the workers what kind of screws they should and shouldn't use. So you kind of go to that level. That was at least my experience. Maybe you don't have to do it that way, but when you care about something so much, then you just go all the way in.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is kind of that like inspirational kind of like thing that you it's almost like if you see this kind of future and like where it could be and like what it should look like and it's in your head and it's driving you forward and it's like pushing you and then at some point you get to see it like in reality and like what was it for you to finally see that first heat bit? What was it? Like did you go and save it somewhere and like hold it up or did you just really soak in that moment? Um, yeah,
Um, Yeah, I saved it. Well, there were quite a few of those. So like it's because you have the prototypes, right? Like first prototype, second, and then like which one is really the first one. Yeah, the first key bits, I actually used them. I thought, well, if I'm gonna send it to customers, I might as well be the first customers and see, whether it's pleasant to use. Um, and actually maybe another important piece of advice for anyone building something: be the user of your own product.
yeah.
At least try to, or get someone close to be the user of your own product. It's kind of important. Um, how did it feel to have it? Having the prototypes was okay. It was more like, oh, it does work. Oh, it doesn't overheat. Oh, it's actually not very loud. Kind of okay, fine. We confirm the technical specs. But once it comes out to the production line, that is special. This is when you know that, oh, like this is serious now. Like this is it's there, it's working. It's
Nice.
again, like with my analogy with the planes, like one thing is to build a plane and you have it on your table and you're like, oh, it looks good, oh, the wings are smooth and whatever. And I think it's a very different feeling when you see the plane flying.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Gosh. Was there what was the immediate reaction just from like your friends and family and the first customers, first 100 customers? Were they all just as hyped up about it as you were, or like what kind of reactions and reviews did you get?
The customers were very hyped. I think we really hit the right spot with the product. Like people were super excited. Then what happens, and definitely what happened to us, is the reality hits, and all this like current that you have to swim against kind of hits as well. So in our case, we had really long delays with our product. Um, Multiple reasons, from our own underestimation of how long things would take. Like building a mold to produce a plastic part can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And that's actually when you try to speed things up. So there was that. Then you would have like logistical problems. Then you have holidays, and especially if you're operating internationally, different countries have different holidays, right? In the West and in the US, you will have the Christmas holidays. So basically, the last 10 days or so of December, nothing works. Maybe 2 weeks of December, nothing works. Then you have like a week or so in China where things are okay, but then you have the Chinese New Year, and then another month things do not work, right? So things like that start hitting, and things start getting delayed. So but for the customers, they paid the money, they still worry whether they're ever gonna get the product delivered. So a lot of customers get kind of nervous. And especially as they write to support, but no response, and I can't respond because I'm at the factory speaking to the workers, right? So a lot of customers are like, uh-oh, like I'm probably gonna lose my money, so I want a refund. So we would send the money back. Uh, but then I think we had like 30% or so of refunds. But then there was still a very big group of customers who would see our efforts and really believed in us. I don't know. There was something. There was some reason that they really believed in us. And yeah, and then we started delivering the products to them, and that was exciting. It was like, wow, it's there, and it's great, and it's not loud, and it mines Bitcoin. It's awesome.
Looking back, Alex, is there anything that, because it's an incredible journey just from what you described, just from the initial idea and the curiosity about like whether it could be done or not. But looking back, was there any like key mistakes that you look and you're like, dang, I could have saved myself a year, I could have saved myself 6 months. Was there any like really hard learnings that you had to go through that you wish you would have known ahead of time?
Mm, I think sometimes, so as an early stage startup, you do get beaten up here and there all the time. I think that's natural. But those are not necessarily because you made mistakes, just a natural course of things. Um, I think where the learnings that I would take would be that sometimes as founders we tend to be quite optimistic in like, okay, this is gonna be fine, this is gonna be fine. But then in reality, like, think of all the things that could go wrong, and then double that, and that's probably gonna be what's gonna go wrong. Especially, I'm speaking about the product, right?
Right.
On the user side, I actually found it quite the opposite. We had so much support from the community; it's unbelievable. I didn't realize that we would have so much support. But whenever you have the product, and I think it's going to be similar with software products. Like, think of all the things that's going to go wrong, double it, and that's the amount of bugs that you're going to have to deal with. Same with hardware. It's just with hardware, it's a little harder. Maybe that's why it's called hardware. Because you don't have the physical possession of the product, right? If the manifestation of your product is a website, you can change it anytime. If it's in a mobile app, you can still change it. There's just a bit of a delay, and then it gets uploaded to your user's phone. If it's a physical product, what you can't just take all those products and back to your warehouse, change it, send it back, because UPS is going to make way too much money.
Right.
Yeah, so being a little less optimistic, having a bit more of this, like keeping things simpler. So you want to have, oh, I want to have this like 20 functions. No, have just one, but make it work well. I think these are the kind of learnings that I took for myself. And I regularly, when I speak to our team, I regularly tell the same thing. It's like, hey guys, don't make this function, don't make this function fancy. Just simple. Like, it's on or off. no need for timers, no need for like fancy AI stuff. No, it's on or off, and that's enough for 90% of our users, and they're gonna appreciate that it's very simple. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we noticed right away is like it just almost immediately it just came up and started running. Um, one of the guys downloaded the app, and then it was after that it was off the races. It was really up. It was like it was almost like just plug it in and then it was going. So
We
that
we
that was
really
very
try to
pleasant to find. Yeah, yeah,
we really try to make it a plug and play experience. And this is where we had to make some of the choices. Like I'll give you an example. Um, for for someone who, let's say, is quite a bit of a Bitcoin maxi, they immediately want to mine to their own pool. You know, makes sense. I understand. It makes complete sense. But uh, we didn't want to have this set up your own pool as part of the onboarding journey because it's a barrier to entry into mining. Not everyone understands what to do there. So the way that we had to set it up is first you press the button, it starts mining. So it's kind of set up for you, which naturally makes it more centralized because we made the choice of which mining pool it goes, etc. But then that's actually something that we're rolling out now. Users can just switch. Like for those users who want to switch, they can just switch, right? So we kind of had to make it like a two-step process. That yeah, some of the users who are more familiar with just using regular Bitcoin miners, they would be like, oh, why is that? Why can't I choose it straight away? Yeah. And then you also asked me about raising funds. We
right, yeah.
we ended up actually raising our seed round only last year. So 4 years after we're starting, we already had like a few million in sales, not
Wow.
units, but few million in
Yeah.
dollar value in sales. We ended up raising the round from I think we're gonna announce it soon, so I think maybe I
Okay.
shouldn't
Yeah.
preempt with all the
Yeah.
details.
Well,
But yeah,
congrats.
we
Yeah.
we raised a good round from I think some of the best investors in the Bitcoin space. And yeah, I really have a lot of respect for our investors and how they treat us and what they do for the space. So yeah, I think I'm very excited about that, and let's see what else we're gonna build in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious your thoughts on kind of switching gears here, but like, what's your thought on this kind of whole new? I don't know if it's just happened here recently because I don't follow too much of the mining stuff, but there does seem to be this kind of new resurgence of like home mining that's kind of taken off this cycle, whether it's like with the bit axes or the HeatBit or like the other ones that they have. Like, what are your thoughts on how you look at the ecosystem? Because you're definitely a part of that group of consumer mining now. Like, how does like yeah, what do you think about that stuff?
I think, to be honest, I think it kind of the need kind of existed before. And you know that mining actually started at home, right? It started with the CPUs. Um, and then it became more and more industrial. Now you have this big sweatshops and of miners and I think it was for a long time it was limited by lack of machines. It's not that easy to build a miner. It takes quite a bit of work for someone who does the electronics. And it's not so easy to get access to the chips. And our first device we actually built we repurposed an existing miner. There was an S9 Antminer inside. The current device, the one that you've got, we actually built the miner ourselves. We bought the chips from a good reputable supplier and built the miner as well specifically for this device. So we kind of unlocked some of this. Then you have Scott, built an open source, a very simple one chip miner with, but the chip that's accessible, it's like can be reused chips from Bitmain. And he just opened it up and gave to the world an ability to, you know, just mine at home again. So with more and more of these devices available, I think more and more mining is actually going to be done at home. In my view, a lot of it is now driven uh, by the desire to support the network. So if you know, just mining at home, it's nothing to do with heating. The reason you do it is, I think there's few, but one is to support the network, and I think it's a great reason. And second one, it's a bit like a lottery ticket because a lot of it is done with solar mine. It's like, okay, you know, I'm gonna pay a few bucks a month, but then, you know, maybe I win a block. We take it a little bit differently with HeatBit. The way that we see it is, you remember I was talking about efficiency at the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the most efficient mining is when you couple it with heating. And that means, on one hand, it's most efficient, but that also makes it the most resilient mining, right? So it doesn't rely on the people wanting to support the network. Because, you know, what if they start believing less in Bitcoin, or what if the price of Bitcoin drops, so they start kind of the upside of catching the block is going to be much smaller. But then if you couple it with heating, you never have a reason to turn it off. If you need heat, you use it, you know? And I think, you know, now other companies started entering the space, and I'm glad. Like before, I think a lot of people, including investors, would think, oh, these guys are nuts. Like they don't even have competition.
Isn't
Now
it
when
funny how
other
that works? Isn't that funny
now,
how that works, Alex?
yeah. Now that other companies are entering, I'm like, oh, okay, fine. You know, we kind of created a category. Great.
Isn't that funny how that works? Can you talk about that? Because there's not a lot. I don't think there's a lot of founders that actually experience that. Because you can go and talk to a ton of people and you can say, I have this great idea. It's going to do this, 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 and this. Look at the traction we're getting. Look at the money that we're making. You know, and then you ask for that investment, or you just ask them to be a part of it, whether it's a partner or something. And then they're like, no, no, you know, whatever the answer is. But then like you circle back like 2 years later, a year later, and then everybody's doing the same thing. Like, can you talk
Yeah.
about that, what that feels like as a founder?
Um, what that feels like as a founder. I don't know. To be honest, I think you don't get too much time for kind of thinking about the feelings, right? You have the product, you have the customers, you need to run around. You're like, okay, I'm gonna present now, and you know, maybe I'll raise some money. And the way that you see money is not your income, right? It's basically you getting more resources to build stuff.
Exactly.
Right. So, and then, okay, maybe I'll get more resources and we can build better stuff. Um, I'm trying to remember all the conversations we had in like 2021, 22.
Because did they think that it was like, oh, no one's gonna want what's gonna happen? I'm sure you got this. It was like, oh, what's gonna happen when it's a summer? Like, you know, like or like they're
Yeah.
not gonna do it, and then that sort of thing. So you definitely get
What's gonna
pushback.
happen in the summer? Like in summer, you don't use your heater. It's a simple answer, right? Kind
Right.
of obvious. Um, uh, it's like, oh, then they're not gonna buy. It's like, well, but people buy heaters.
Yeah, people buy heaters anyway.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember the conversations. I think um I think at first it was even hard to break into the community and to get the right meetings.
Mm.
Because we didn't really know anyone. And then you end up actually I think you end up wasting a lot of time. A lot of the time people say, "Oh, I'm interested to invest." They just want to learn about your business. They kind of be curious, and then you're spending your very valuable resources. And as a founder, you probably want the most valuable resources of the company on presenting to someone who never actually really, you know, never actually been serious about it. Um, uh, that's one. And two, I noticed a lot of the time, especially when you don't have like a good network to reach out to, the good network of investors to reach out to, you spend a lot of time on cold messages, emails, and whatnot. And I found it very useful to actually see whether people actually invest. And it's simple. You just go on something like Crunchbase and see, okay, this fund, how many investments have they done in the last year? If it's two investments in the last year, I mean, if it's seed stage, you probably want to target funds who do at least like five, better 10 investments in a year, right? Because if they do two in a year, what are the chances that, they're
Yeah.
going to invest in you? Probably pretty small. Maybe they don't even have the money. Who knows? But just don't waste your time.
Right.
And then the most valuable ones, that, the initial traction, it was through the customers. The customers would be like, well, great product. We really like you guys. What do you need? I'm like, I'm looking for investors. Like, oh, I can introduce you to this and this. And then because it's an introduction, one, it's much more likely that you actually have a good meeting, and two, because of this introduction, the other side actually treats you better, and they can actually give you some useful feedback and stuff like that. Maybe they say, very often they would say, well, this is not quite the right fit for us, but I can introduce you to this and this, and then they actually do.
Yeah.
So yeah, just make when you're building good stuff, just keep openly talking to people, and they will try to help. Don't be afraid to take the help.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you about the other thing was about the future of it all, but you don't have to give up too much of what you're building, but where do you see this, where do you see y'all evolving to at some point? Do you see like home automation or do you see like I don't know, a garage door opener? Like where do you see the because you obviously had this vision early on and you were first to market with it and so right there for me that's like a green flag that you kind of see the future a little bit differently than others and that's a
Right.
rare thing to find in an individual. Like where do you see this kind of going? Like what are the possibilities that it could turn into?
I can tell you. So, naturally, there's gonna be more powerful devices, etc. Um, Naturally, there's gonna be other things that you can heat at home, or cool. Actually, there are some ways that we can do cooling. We've been working on that as well. But that's a bit harder. So I think cooling will come a bit late. But overall, I think what we're gonna be moving towards is a few things. One is opening it up. You see the success of open source, and I'm not sure I understood it like 2, 3 years ago. Now that I kind of spoke to more people, kind of read more about this, I think it makes a lot of sense to open source a lot of what we do, and we're gonna moving in that direction. So next product is most likely gonna be an open source HeatBit.
Interesting.
That's gonna be one, and two, I think we're gonna start moving towards this whole idea of privacy and sovereignty. So there's this great startup called Start9. So they make devices where you can run your own services. They are making devices that can kind of be a replacement for cloud. And the pitch is very simple. Say, well, cloud is basically just someone else's computer. So when you run your Gmail or Telegram, WhatsApp, I don't know, what do you, Riverside, right? It runs on someone else's computer, so they have access to all of your data and they can actually change it as well. So for a lot of things, it makes sense to, why don't you just run it on your own computer? Most people don't do it because it's cumbersome, right? It's not like one click plug and play step. So, but I think, me being the user of my own products, I sometimes I feel a little uncomfortable that people at Gmail, they could just read all my emails. They could respond to my emails as well, you know.
Right.
And same goes to all the communication. I thought, why can't I run my own email server on my own device? So that's like all this, I think, very similar vision to this Start nine guys, what they're doing. But then one part that I think could be complementary is when this device is when you start to create some sort of a commerce around those apps, right? So the reason that the ecosystem of apps is so valuable for Google Play or for Apple is because there's commerce around it, right? There's third-party developers who can build apps and who can make money, and then they can build more apps, right? So because you have this commerce element, you can start attracting third-party developers to build on the platform. Now, if you have the devices that are these sovereign, provide this kind of sovereign services, from running a Bitcoin node to running your own email to chat apps, whatever, basically your own private home cloud in your own device. And then you have the commerce element to it. So that device actually generates income through mining naturally. Then you can actually even start paying with a hash rate. Then the developers could be building for those devices privacy and sovereignty focused apps and the developers could be paid with the hash rate from those devices. You see, so it feels like these things can really connect very well. And I think that's the direction that we're going to be taking with the next devices.
Interesting. So you see it more going more in a sovereign way of mining, and building out that ecosystem.
Yeah, and it doesn't go against being more and more adopted by the markets.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So Telegram just, I think today or yesterday, they announced that now they have over 1 billion users. So Telegram, when they started, they positioned themselves as the messenger focused on privacy. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of like what's the most private, most secure messenger, but
Right.
the positioning was that the most secure, the most private messenger out there. And now they've grown into 1 billion users. Billion users is more than 10% of the global population. Yeah, probably more than like 20% of the global population with internet connection. So it can grow big. And how many Bitcoin nodes out there? How many people do home mining? Not as many. So if we're able to introduce devices that cater to people who care about privacy, but maybe you shouldn't go against the convenience, but they care about privacy, and turn them into Bitcoin miners, and each one of them, like imagine each one of the Telegram users, this billion people, was actually securing the network with 1 terahash. Yeah, that would be more than the total Bitcoin network right now.
Wow.
I mean total mining network right now. So I think there's a lot that we can do there.
Interesting. Well, I'm here for it. I can't wait to see what you come up with next. If it's like your last product, it's going to be a home run. Um, Thank you for coming on the show. Where can people find out about the HeatBit? Where can they learn more about you if they want to get in contact? And then finally, yeah, any last words?
Well, thanks for inviting me to the show. I think if people want to find out about HeatBits, they can come to Pleb Lab. I think, by the way, I think you've built an amazing place. I've
Oh,
I've come
thanks.
a couple of times, and it's the place and the people. I think the people are even bigger part of it. Like just the
Yeah.
conversations that you have. I think it's amazing. I really like what you built.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate that.
HeatBit.com, the website. On Twitter, it's very easy to find us. My Twitter handle is Alex_HeatBit. Yeah, can DM me. I'm right there. So yeah, we're always looking for builders. We're always looking for good partners. As one very smart person told me, a good entrepreneur should always be raising money. So we're always raising money. So yeah, just reach out and talk. I think there's a lot that can and should be built in our space in the next few years.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you, Alex, and thank you for all you do, and thank you for making this new category. I mean,
Thank you.
mining's making a comeback this cycle. I love it.